Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
Hi, and welcome to episode 34 of the GreggHoush Show. Here with me tonight is the wonderful Kayla.
That's me.
And, of course, good old co-host Mac.
It's the Mac Daddy! It's the back and Mac! He's Return of the Mac! He's Mac Truck Your Way! He's the Mac and Cheesiest! He's the Mac Book of Mac
You're losing
Facts.
momentum,
I know,
Kayla.
because I haven't done it in a few weeks.
Yeah, you were off
big
last
Mac
week.
attack.
It's
Yes,
the Big
Mac attack. There you go. And Anna's here with us tonight.
Hey, everybody.
And special guest Zayda from Indivisible Mystic Valley, local political group here, and also working with a couple other groups too, like Our Revolution and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about some fun local politics, not because I necessarily think that our international audience cares about specifically my town's local politics, but because
Yes, they do.
everyone should care about local politics near them, and the more we talk about it, the better people will get at it. So first,
All politics are local.
Tip O'Neill.
I thought you were about to say all politics matter, and I was going to slap something.
She's quoting Tip O'Neill.
Yes, indeed. So, first up, let's talk about some news here, because it just
Speaking of local
keeps
politics that are
happening.
actually national.
Yeah, how about those mall cops calling out Roy Moore there?
That was
The Roy moron.
I'm impressed that this story actually managed to get so much worse over the last week. It was bad enough before.
But, wait, are you impressed that it's gotten worse, or did you expect it to get worse?
I mean, I didn't expect it to happen quite this quickly. I thought it would take a little longer.
Yeah.
I honestly expected that we wouldn't get, enough of the horrifying details until after the election. And then, it would be too late and everyone would be like, oh, why did you vote for him? And Alabama would actually have an excuse because, they could pretend that they didn't know.
I mean, considering it's Alabama and the fact that this guy has been removed from the bench twice and still somehow elected, I don't know, nothing really surprises me anymore. And so I don't even think we've even got to the worst of the worst yet.
No, there's probably more that's worse that's going to come out.
The fact that people keep coming out just, says the world there. But
And the fact that apparently everyone in Gadsden knew about his reputation. They've had dozens of people be like, oh yeah, everyone knew about that he was dating young girls and he was creeping them all.
many people willing to go on the record. They're
And
putting their name to it. They're not even hiding.
People, former attorneys and judges that he worked with while he was a DA.
It was common knowledge.
Yeah, it's like we all kind of saw him with younger women. We all thought it was weird, but I mean, that's what Roy does. He just dates younger women. It's like, first of all, they're not even women yet. They're minors.
So
Yeah.
one of the more interesting things I heard this week was out of Mitch McConnell's camp, and the turtle had an idea. Our wonderful.
If you say believe women, that's not his idea.
No, that's definitely not his idea. His really interesting idea was if you want to deal with the fact that Roy Moore isn't being taken off the ballot, there's very few ways they could even accomplish that. So he is just going to be the ballot nominee. Then you have to have a write-in that isn't scared of being basically removed from the party for 6 years. Because if you run against the ballot nominee as a Republican, then they will kick you out of the party basically for 6 years in Alabama.
Why? Is it just Alabama, or is that the Republican?
It's just a local Alabama rule where their committee basically says we will not allow you to run in our primaries. We will not fund you. We will not anything. So if anyone runs a write-in campaign against him, that's 6 years out of the party. You are done. Your political career is over if you try that.
Why is Alabama so fucked up?
So here's McConnell's idea. It is that you give Trump a win by getting Sessions out. So Sessions quits his job and then goes back as the write-in, because Sessions would actually win as a write-in there against Moore, and then that solves everyone's problem.
Okay, question though. Is that even...
except for everyone who, doesn't want any of those people in power.
No, but also, is that even a possibility that, can he just step down?
And then run right in? Absolutely. Yeah.
Why does this feel like it is blatantly unethical?
Well,
Because Mitch
because it would
McConnell came
involve-
up with it.
Also, because it would involve putting Jeff Sessions in a Senate seat again.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the South.
Indeed. So, while I hope and pray that that doesn't happen, it was the most interesting idea I heard so far this week about how to deal with Moore. And the only one that actually had any kind of plausible ending. Other than just, the Democrat winning in Alabama, I don't...
Yeah, that just doesn't...
Well, I mean, it's not impossible.
Crazy things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think if Doug Jones loses to Roy Moore, which is very possible, unfortunately, but I mean, fuck the world.
Yeah.
If a Democrat, and I don't know if you guys saw the was it someone Schmo or something like that. I forgot who it was.
I think I know who you're talking
It
about.
was it was some senator. It was a senator or congressman where the ABC News reporter was chasing him down the stairs, asking him for a comment, and all he kept saying was "I'll believe the Democrats are going to do a severe disservice to the country. I believe," and they just kept repeating it over and over again. It's really, you think that a pedophile is better to be elected to office than a Democrat?
I mean, yes, they clearly do think that.
They've been saying it very publicly.
This isn't really a new turn of events, honestly. That is kind
I
of...
don't think that affects their governing.
That's their base, is the pedophilia base.
I mean, there was that famous quote about, the only way to lose this, a Republican to lose this election would be to be caught with a live boy or a dead girl. Yeah.
Well,
that was decades ago, too.
Give us a couple of days, and I'm sure Roy Moore will definitely finish that for us.
I don't want to know which one of those it's going to be.
It could be both at the same time.
Probably will.
So right now, we're just waiting on all the news as more people come forward, as we all sit here in utter wonderment. I listened to his pastor today on the news, Roy Moore's pastor, and when asked directly, will you disavow him for this? He said, well, these are allegations. And then the person cut him off and said, there are many allegations from people that even all the way up to Mitch McConnell has said he believes these are credible allegations. And he said, well, now you can't just, this isn't going to court. There are no charges. And the reporter said, you are a pastor, sir. How can you say that? And then cut him off. And I'm just, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. How could you possibly consider yourself a man of God and actually be on the side of this pedophile? That's mind-blowing to me. And I'm an atheist.
Right? I'm not a big fan of religion, but come on. But your book is pretty clear.
Yeah, I've read the book. It's pretty clear on this one. Well, I mean, and then it's pretty unclear in other places.
Yeah,
but it's a funny book.
It's all how you interpret it too. Don't forget that, because
and what translation?
Because depending
you're
on which page you're on, it's
following,
literal or interpreted or metaphor
we are all
or whatever.
sinners.
It can sometimes vary within the span of a single page.
Well, according to that pastor, everything Roy Moore did so far is okay.
Well, he's just trying to make another Jesus.
Indeed. Because that's how Jesus happened.
Well, yeah, because Mary was a teenager and Joseph was an adult. That's how Alabama Congressman for GOP justifies pedophilia. Forgetting
the fact that Jesus Christ's name didn't even come up until hundreds of years after those events supposedly happened. And forgetting the fact that Christos was actually just, Roman and late Greek for, a Messiah of any religion.
If you're going to try to use logic in the
forgetting all the logic around that argument, Roy Moore is a piece of shit and should not be elected to any government position.
That being said, we did have some very interestingly related to him, but not these accusations per se, because his lawyer is apparently even nuttier than he is.
An ambulance chaser who has been relieved of duty and suspended for a while.
He actually, not only did he have his license to practice law suspended for 91 days in September of 2014 for ambulance chasing, but the sanctions were actually ordered by the Alabama Supreme Court, of which Roy Moore was the Chief Justice at the time.
And now that's his lawyer.
He can't even get a lawyer that's a good lawyer. And he was the chief lawyer.
Yeah, how is this a thing, right?
That's like fucking Trump and all of his goddamn mustache attorneys who are just outwardly talking
at least
about.
Trump has the excuse of not actually being a lawyer himself. So Roy Moore doesn't even have that excuse. He was a lawyer. He should this should be the one thing he actually knows.
No, because he was removed from the bench twice, so clearly he doesn't know it.
Well, yeah, but that was for violating the Constitution, not for not knowing how to practice as a lawyer.
Well, Isn't that the kind of the same thing?
No.
He was just ignoring the law. That's
Look,
not like
there's a difference between, blatantly ignoring the law because you don't like it and not understanding it in the first place. Apparently, it turns out Roy Moore does both.
It's a difference between incompetence and malice.
Exactly.
So now,
So he likes both in his attorneys. I got it.
I mean,
now
it's the difference.
we wait on more allegations against Moore because they will come at this pace. They're quite fun, and we move on to.
Well, okay, they're not fun.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
But I
It'll be
mean-
fun to watch him go down in flames.
I
Oh,
hope
boy.
he fucking goes down in flames.
But we move on to the left because Al Franken was accused. And what I find most interesting about this is the Republicans who keep getting accused of, diddling children. And the best they could find on a powerful Democrat was that he did something to a very adult woman at a time when he was very much an adult. And while very bad, and he should not have done it, and his apology still has some problems, it's at least interesting to find that over here on the Republican camp, you're looking at 14-year-olds, and over here on the Democrat camp, you're looking at mid-20s to mid-30s.
And on the Republican side, they're going with, like, I mean, some people have said he should step aside, and I know it, this is wrong, but like, he's still running. Like no one's exiling him.
And on the Democratic side, we've got an ethics commission already being called.
Mitch is calling for an ethics investigation.
Franken himself called for
it.
I mean, yeah, and Frank is trying to. I'm not saying he's not trying to excuse anything he's done,
No.
but at least he's trying to own take account of
taking
responsibility of what he has done, acknowledging that he is problematic because all of your heroes are problematic.
There will be no one left at the end of this.
But also, stop having fucking human heroes. They're human. No one's.
Or just acknowledge that they are human and that respect them for the good they do, but don't assume that they're flawless because of that.
Yeah, and don't excuse their flaws.
Yeah, don't defend it when they screw up.
So at least Franken. And the bar's real fucking low that we're saying at least they're admitting that they did was really shitty. They shouldn't be doing shitty things in the first place. But it's nice to see people taking ownership of what they've done and trying to
instead of discrediting the accusers and the victims.
And to the woman who came out and shared her story, Leanne Tweeden, she at least. She accepted his apology, so I think that holds a lot of importance because she
said she didn't care about an ethics investigation or not.
No,
that if Mitch wanted to do it, he could.
Because she was never calling for that.
Yeah.
Her whole story was hey, this is somebody we all know and see in a position of who's doing great things, but guess what? Even people in those positions have done and can do really shitty things, and we need to start talking about all of the inappropriate behaviors that women get on a daily, even from people that we think are great. And so, and I respect that she came out, and I appreciate that she came out, and I appreciate
both sides. I think handled it right.
And
I mean, other than the very first apology where he kind of said, "I don't remember that." His second version of his apology was
let's not
great.
lead with, well, that's not how I remember it. It doesn't matter how you remember it. It's how she remembers it. If she says she felt violated, guess what? You fucking violated.
If she carried it for 10 years, then something happened.
And to that point, the real issue is that this is so systemic that it's unconscious that men are doing this. They're not even aware that this is bad or
a
wrong.
lot of them just mimic behavior they see growing up, and
Exactly.
then it's you can't excuse it. None of that excuses it, but it's definitely that systemic.
But also, to the point of since Franken was in comedy for many years before he switched his career, this also.
I mean, did he?
Arguably, maybe he wasn't in comedy. But that's to each his own, right? Art is subjective. But I mean, this also kind of this plays to the other hand too, with comedy where we have the Louis C.K. that came out last week or whatever. It's there's a huge issue in comedy because there's a lot of men, and especially you see the older white men, the Seinfelds being PC is ruining comedy. It's no, you need to grow the fuck up. Faggot's not a punchline anymore. Pretending to grope women has never been a punchline. Like saying things like that, like, you know, like your wife's a bitch is not a punchline. And there's still a lot of this in comedy, and that's why this keeps getting repeated and it becomes repetitive, and why a lot of times this gets like laughed over, like, oh, women are just being too sensitive. It's like, no, this isn't funny. Like, there's nothing about that. There's no thought to it. There's nothing underlying funny about it. It's just you being a fucking animal thinking like, oh, let me fake touch her boobs while she's asleep and can't tell me no. Like, that's not funny.
So does PC culture here actually stick this time? Because, you know, in about 89 to about 93, it really started to happen, and people started thinking
You
about
gotta
it.
stop using the phrase PC culture for
Because
one.
it's not PC culture is not PC culture is saying like
Back then, it specifically
No,
was
there
fought back against and
no, because
kind
there
of
was
disappeared for a
actually
decade.
trying to be censorship back then, because
Yeah,
like the Tipper
the Parent Music
yeah, the Tipper
Resource Center
Gore,
and
you
all
know,
that.
like
Yeah.
they were actually trying to censor art.
I'm more referring to things like PCU, you know, that wonderful, wonderful movie by
Actually,
Jeremy Piven.
I've never seen it, actually, who's also a monster.
Indeed.
But I mean, no, this is like when people say PC culture in terms of art, they're basically saying like, how dare you not think my racist like joke is like not funny? It's like, yeah,
Right.
because you need to think better. And I think P.F. Tompkins said it best. It's like, no, you're not. It's not PC. You just need to write funnier jokes.
There you go. I love it. I love it. So, Franken, I don't know that we hear too much more about that other than, you know, results from an ethics committee if we're lucky enough to hear those at some point. So
I think it's very likely we'll hear a lot of it because the Republicans
sure,
want
the
to deflect from
Republicans
their
will-
own shit.
Yeah,
Totally,
and I mean,
but-
and I will say that like a lot of people were trying to like calling for him to step down or resign, and the pit in my stomach is like, hey, we've got a 48,
Yeah.
we've got 48 senators. Ugh. And
well, one,
but-
his second apology is really good. She accepted it. I mean,
and I'm gonna default to what she thinks and says, because that's the only way to do this. Is like
Exactly.
what the victim says. Or if she doesn't want to think of herself as a victim, that's totally fine too. But I mean, because it's her story, I will default to what she says. I mean, if someone does choose to run against him when his term is up, I do hope it's a progressive woman.
Yeah.
and then we'll see it from there. But like, there is like one of those things where it's like kind of like it hits you in like the windpipe, like the, you know, sternum, where you're like, oh, we only have a 48.
Yeah.
Can we not lose anymore?
So there is, yeah.
I'm actually hopeful that, like Barney Frank survived his, you know, escort service being run out of his apartment back in the 80s, that,
Yeah.
that Franken can survive this.
Yes. Because this was not, I mean, this was nothing on the scale of what Roy Moore is accused of. But for the victim, it is important, and it is important that it came out.
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces that we get out of, you know, this right here is, you know, the victim isn't saying like, run him out of town. And, you know, you see a lot of other things where people are talking about, hey, there's this gross level of harassment or these couple specific things that I've had to deal with. That's not like lock them up, but like we need to talk about this and fix this. And we culturally don't have any method of like having men come forward and say, I did this bad thing. I am sorry. What do I have to do to come back into society's good graces? We just don't have it.
Yeah, it's like either they're innocent or, you know, lock them up forever, never redeemable. There's no gray area that can be addressed. And like, yeah, what you did was bad, but you've acknowledged that. You're working to, you know, make amends. And while you can't ever really make up for it, you know, you can try and be a better person in the future. Well,
in America, there is absolutely a mechanism for that. It's score more touchdowns.
okay, fair enough.
Because if you're doing that,
No,
then
not
everyone
just
forgets.
score. Not
That
just
is a
score. You
different-
have to be able to throw the touchdown. You need to be able to catch the touchdown. You need to
I'm
be able
just
to
saying,
block
like,
the
you know,
touchdown.
the ones
you
who-
basically just need to be a very great NFL player. That's all
If you do that, it kind of gets forgotten, right? So there's
it
one
never- it never
mechanism.
gets- It never gets talked about.
That's not resolving the thing, though. That's forgetting the thing. That's
just
we're
pretending it
putting under the
didn't
rug.
occur.
Honestly, that's
Exactly.
why I think, too, restorative justice is so important. This would be
Yes.
a perfect example of using those ideas to work on restorative justice.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's see where that ends up. I think, you know, now let's move on to the destruction of our economy,
Speaking of a gear shift.
Speaking of another assault,
otherwise known as the House passes the tax bill.
No, it was gonna
so,
happen.
Shitty tax bill.
So, you know, one of the best parts about this tax bill is that all the things that might even slightly, almost remotely, maybe help the middle class go away after 5 years anyways. So they're not, they're not guaranteed.
A bunch
And-
of them don't really
and
help
they don't
the middle
really
class the
help
way
you
they did it.
anyways. And more than half of the benefit of this goes to just the 1%. You have to be that wealthy to get more than 50% of the actual benefit from this. And it's amazing that they think this is going to get through the Senate, and they already have at least one Republican that said, I'm not voting for this. Multiple who are now talking about,
Didn't
there need
Johnson
to
come
be-
out? Johnson came
Yeah,
out
he's
today.
the one that specifically
Well,
said.
Cornyn said he wouldn't vote for anything that raises the deficit by a penny
Yep.
or a dime. Was it?
I don't remember the
I don't know
exact
what.
phrasing.
It was one of those
you
coins that
can't
we
cut
don't use.
$1.4 trillion in 10 years and not raise the deficit. There's no math that works there.
Well, like none of their math works. That's why they delayed even releasing this.
That's why they keep releasing things where like $1 billion is off.
No, but they actually like did delay this because they didn't do the math, and
Yeah.
or they did, and they're like, "Hey, math doesn't work."
And then it's going to lower the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20, which means all those people
Because
that
that's
were
what the middle class has been crying
well,
for.
all those people that were supposedly paying 35 but were actually paying near zero now get to pay truly zero. I would think, because if you were paying like actually an actualized of like 7%, and that was when we were at 35, then at 20 you should be able to get away with 1%, maybe. I don't know.
I
mean,
just love how but their whole thing is like the forgotten middleman of the middle class, the forgotten middle. It's like the silent
we
majority.
didn't forget ourselves.
No, but like that's like their whole Republicans, like the middle class, and we're jobs, middle class. It's like, and then you look at their tax plan, and it's like, okay, you're gonna get rid of the death tax,
Yep.
which only affects like literally 400 people.
Yeah.
and then the corporate tax. Okay, what about this is helping the middle class that you supposedly
let's
love
talk
so
about
much?
the things that help the middle class, like the part where they're reducing the number of income tax brackets from 7 to 4, which if you actually look at the math means that the amount that you have to pay, to earn before you pay the top tax rate basically increases by about 50%-ish. So a whole bunch of that income of the people that are pretty much right around the top 1% suddenly gets a lower tax rate. There's the part where there's an expanded child tax credit for 5 years, except the expansion isn't refundable. So if you aren't paying enough in federal taxes, then you don't get any of that anyway. Also a non-refundable $300 family tax credit for taxpayers and their non-child dependents. You no longer get to deduct your state and local taxes.
So it's a lot of numbers that look like they're helping the middle class, but then if you look at it, there's almost no way for the lower income families to get at it.
And then there's the ones like the elimination of the alternative minimum tax, which is specifically the thing that keeps rich people from writing off too much of their income. And then there's I think my favorite one is just the lowering the tax rate on pass-through businesses like S-corps, sole proprietorships, and partnerships, which does in fact help a bunch of small businesses, but also helps things like hedge funds and law firms that make an unbelievable amount of money, but are just under the same legal classification. They could have written that to, tailor it to the small businesses, but obviously that wasn't going to happen.
No, of course not. And like, they've also changed there's like, isn't there like a family like tax credit that like Ivanka's like trying to work on that like she hasn't like, or did she just quit working on it altogether?
I think that one was basically similar to the expanded child tax credit. It wasn't quite the same, but it was very similar. And that one is, not refundable for the expansions. So if you weren't paying enough in federal taxes, then you don't see any benefit from that.
It's just ridiculous. And like, it's just so mind blowing that like the fact that they talk about the corporate tax rate, and like my father listens to Squawk Box all the time on MSNBC with like fucking Joe Kernan and the likes, and they're always talking about the goddamn like corporate tax. And it's like, why the F do you guys think that someone in like middle America is sitting in there and be like, you know what we need in this America? A lower corporate tax rate. Like that's who.
How do the people at the top even think like that? Like the lower income people, a tax break doesn't help them.
But no one's
I need
thinking.
to pay a bill this month. I don't care about the fact that you're not going to steal another $300 from me next year. I care about the fact that
But
I
like
have
no
to pay a
one's
bill
even
now.
thinking. But like no
So
one's
these tax
thinking
breaks
about
don't
the
help anyways.
yeah, and no
You
one's
can
even
give me
thinking
a
about the
100%
corporate tax rate.
break. I won't notice because I don't like
Because
that.
you're
Doesn't
not
help
thinking
me.
about the corporate tax rate. You don't
Yeah.
give a shit.
Also, who
Like,
was
most-
it?
most people don't give a
Mnuchin
shit.
Or Wilbur Ross. One of them, one of Trump's top financial advisors, went to a bunch of Wall Street CEOs and was like, "So, we cut your corporate tax rate. You'll, how many of you will invest more money in hiring and everything?" And like one guy raised his hand, because all the CEOs know perfectly well that the corporate tax burden has fuck all to do with how much hiring they're going to be doing.
Yeah, nothing. Mark Cuban came out and specifically said nothing about this tax bill will make me invest more money in anything. It does not affect it at all, positive or negative.
And one of the big things that I noticed that they cut that you are talking about is the Medicare and the allowances for older people who are in nursing homes. Like they're going to get rid of that. So
Oh yeah,
you're
'cause
already.
they don't give a shit about old people.
I mean, like these are people that are at the last moments of their life, and yeah, let's tax them more.
But
Yeah.
we're going to get rid of the estate tax so that people that are worth $11 million don't have to worry about their estate getting taxed.
And we're going to bring back mandatory arbitration, so when you're getting abused in your last years of life, and
You don't actually have any recourse.
yeah, there's nothing that you can fuck all do with it. And we're also going to add in the repeal of the ACA mandatory tax credit, so we can just sabotage the ACA one more time.
Good times. So now we get to
The economy's a great time, going down the
get to
bucket.
just watch all this fun
just setting
stuff.
it on fire.
Can't act like we're surprised it got through the House, though. We always knew it was going to get through the House. The Senate's where it
Yeah,
matters.
same as with all the Obamacare repeals.
So now we get to wait and watch the Senate try and deal with this one, where they really have to actually fight for every vote. They don't have enough of a majority there to really walk this line. You know, over on the House side, they can have 10, 15 people not vote for it on the
So-
Republican side and still pass things.
Stupid question. Is it a 51 or 60% majority for this?
This one, I don't think could pass under reconciliation or increase in the deficit, but I'm not.
So we get to watch the dance as they fight with each other over what they want, and all the various divisions in the Republican Party show again. And they try to find ways to win over Democrats that will not in any circumstance come
Win
along
over
with them.
Democrats. They have to win over all of the Republicans too, and they're not. Yeah, they haven't.
They know they're not going to,
Yeah.
though, so they're going to try and play some games. So let's wait and see what the Senate does with that one.
Meanwhile, they're also going to pass through a guy who's demonstrably unfit to be on the Alabama federal court.
Yes, incredibly unfit.
Like so unfit, it should be criminal.
Has never tried a case in his life.
Married to one of the White House staffers.
Has only been a lawyer for a couple years or a few years
And
now.
before he was a lawyer, he was a paranormal investigator
He was also a horror writer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
and a blogger.
He's such a millennial.
Amazing.
He is. He's 36 years old. Oh my god.
I just
Don't worry, he's white. Don't worry. In case you were curious. Yes, he's white.
Wow. So in the ever increasing fight against the environment, our planet, and everyone and everything in it,
And also anything that the Obama administration ever did.
a
Or ever thought of.
Republican controlled House, Senate, presidency, everything have repealed a rule, a law put in by Obama in 2014
Okay,
to
this one really upsets me. Like
to
more
block
than
elephant
normal.
trophies being brought back from Zimbabwe and Zambia. And what they are saying is now that you will be able to bring back your trophies if they were, if the elephants were killed in the act of conservation, which that's not a thing in those two countries right now. The conservation is don't kill them.
And these are countries that have huge problems, well, especially
Poaching
Zimbabwe,
problems.
huge problems with poachers, yeah.
Clearly, Donald Jr. wants an elephant.
Again.
Obviously. So
yeah, this is definitely. Or,
He wants his trophy this time.
Yeah, this is either it's because we know it's not for Eric because who the fuck is Eric, and he doesn't
Right.
he doesn't even like Eric. But like, okay, first of all, I love elephants. That's like one of my days. My goal in life is to like own an elephant refugee. There's actually in Alabama. It's in Arkansas. There's an elephant refuge in Arkansas that I've been dying to go to. So this makes me want to murder people.
So yeah, we get to watch more animals die as we also watch the environment go to hell thanks to all the other
Why?
people he's put in
I
power.
didn't watch the press briefing today. So I don't know if they tried to explain this away.
They had to because the only way they were able to do this is because there's a provision of the Endangered Species Act saying that the government can give permits to import trophies if there is evidence that the hunting benefits conservation for that species. And so they were like, well, we have new information that suggests that allowing the hunting to occur does support conservation efforts. And then didn't actually go into any real details.
Like it just blows my mind that this, like, just because, like, 100% this is only because Obama put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The evidence is like a crayon drawing that Eric Trump did, right?
and it's of Obama. Like that's all it is. It's just like Obama did it. We get rid of it.
It's angry Obama, like keeping him from taking his elephant head in, and Eric's crying with like, big cartoon tears.
So now we head over to the Middle East. In the actual Middle East, unlike, what Trump believes, Israel is actually in the Middle East. So in his first interview with an Arabic language newspaper, Israel's Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenat said that he viewed Israel and Saudi Arabia as natural allies due to their mutual enemy, Iran. So basically, Israel has reached out to Saudi Arabia to say that together we should take on Iran. And boy, that's an interesting notion. I mean, the first Arabic language newspaper interview with the Lieutenant General.
Yeah, there were some other interesting bits in that where he said that Israel is willing to share information if there's a need because there are many shared interests between Israel and Saudi Arabia. He accused Iran of trying to destabilize the region, building weapons factories and supplying advanced weapons to guerrillas and terrorists. All sorts of I guess you'd call it very predictable lines from an Israeli senior official, except with the addition of, also, we're willing to work with Saudi Arabia on this one, which, given the events in Saudi Arabia recently, is a very interesting statement.
So we will get to see what Iran's response is to that. Probably some wonderful words tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be too happy about that one.
And on to domestic terrorism. So Anonymous has reared its head up again and is going after the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, the KKK, all of these horrible, horrible people by taking down their websites. They've taken down more than a dozen websites now in the last few days. And these are ones like, CNKKK.net. These are KKK sites in Texas, in Virginia. It's the
League of the South, several of their sites.
And the American Knights.
The more extremist groups among the Oath Keepers, like the Oath Preppers.
Yep. So
They did get base stickmans, which makes me happy.
yes, that definitely needed to go. So if you want to see something funny, go look at the various screenshots online of what they replaced sites with. There's all kinds of good imagery there. Now I am going to turn this introduction over to Anna and say that it's time to talk a little politics, specifically on the local level, with the goal of, again, informing people that you should work locally to solve many of your problems. We need more people going into local politics because the only way you get people at the top that you like is to help them get into local politics when they're young. So, Anna?
All right, well, thank you. A lot of our listeners are familiar with this. I show up on the show and I tell you guys stuff about Malden, and you forget the names of people because none of this affects you directly. Zayda hasn't been here before, so she doesn't know that I've been complaining at you all about this. Zayda is, what's your position in Indivisible, Mystic Valley?
I am the leader of Indivisible.
Leader, okay.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure I used the right title there, because...
Well, It's a bunch of millennials that titled me, so I'm lead.
Okay.
The is too much for them.
All right. So the lead of Indivisible Mystic Valley, which Mystic Valley is our local region. It's a couple of cities. She's also a founding member of Our Revolution Malden, which is a group that I've worked with. She participated and actually started taking over Nicole Mosalam's school committee bid. We had Nicole on here twice now, right? Great friend of the show.
I was told recently that I should call myself an organizer ninja. That's my new title.
That is an excellent title.
And next week, maybe I'll be a chemical engineer. I just put on the hat and
just pick them at random.
Just randomly.
And since
Make sure to add them all to your LinkedIn. It's important.
I think so too.
I like to do it. Put all mine on MySpace.
Oh, you still have MySpace?
Yeah,
How do you
shut that down? Like,
that's still a thing?
Yeah, Justin Timberlake bought it and put it back up as a music streaming service and social network.
Isn't that in 08?
Something like that. It's still there.
That's when I graduated high school.
Of course you did.
I always thought NSYNC would be like the worst thing he ever did, but then he bought MySpace.
You shut your mouth. NSYNC was amazing. Okay?
You're that age.
Yes,
okay,
I was.
And
a Backstreet Boys, and a Spice Girl, and a Britney Spears, and a Christina
Aguilera.
So he's bringing sexy back still?
No, God, no.
Okay.
No.
So anyway, since this is radio, I do have to inform you that Zayda is of Mexican heritage, and so she has the unenviable position of being the only brown person in the room in a lot of activist spaces.
In every activist space.
Yes.
But sometimes I like to pretend I'm brown. Is that okay?
No.
Damn it.
No. Now, can you qualify why that is?
Why what is?
Why it's...
I can't qualify why she's brown. That's not... You can't just ask somebody why they're brown.
That way.
You made a statement there that implies that in most activist spaces, they're full of white people. And there are a few good reasons for that. Most of them socioeconomic.
That is definitely an issue, socioeconomic. But to be honest, especially with the phenomenon of new activism since the Trump administration, Indivisible 100% across the board is white. Like, no, seriously. There were two brown people that are members of Indivisible at the Indivisible conference, and I was one of them.
Wow. That needs to be fixed.
Yeah, we're working on that. And what's interesting is I actually met the founder of Indivisible a couple of months ago, and he was really excited to meet me because he had heard of me.
So you're like this mythical brown person. Like, I heard there was a minority amongst us, but I never actually believed
Prophecy
it.
came true.
All of my dreaming.
It's kind of like the Lion King, but not really.
Right.
It's sad, like sad Lion King. No, but he was like really interested in understanding what spoke to me about his document or joining his group. And I had to tell him that it reminded me of my civics class. It reminded me what my responsibility was as a citizen of this country, that I wasn't just a voter, I was a constituent, and I deserve to have my voice heard. And because I hadn't taken that opportunity to get in touch with my members of Congress, to get in touch with my local representatives, to do those things that were my obligation as a citizen, I wasn't being heard, and Trump got elected. And so it really resonated with me. And I mean, again, I have the privilege of living a middle-class background. I'm not a single mom or working 3 jobs or doing any of those things. So I felt it even more important to occupy that space and to stand up and start doing things because of this election.
That does sound a lot like, some of how I felt when I read that document too. My great-grandmother was a suffragette. So I was raised with, you have to show up and you have to vote. Like, your great-grandmother went to jail for this. And for most of my life, I was like, well, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do this thing. And, that Indivisible document really hammers home the point that, like, no, it's not enough. It's not enough to vote and show up for jury duty. There's more.
Yeah. And I mean, I also, and I think that that's another thing that's interesting about this space that I'm occupying of all these newly activated activists. Um, a lot of them have this background or were activists when they were younger, but then life got in the way, kids, mortgages, bills, and we just kind of fell away from it. And we were just like, let's leave it up to somebody else. Somebody else is smarter, got more money, got more time to do it. And that's not how democracy works.
In the end, those smarter people with more time do not show up for activist events usually.
Amen
They
to that.
they are smarter people with more time making lots of money and ignoring all of that because things are working for them.
Well, and I think that's another problem with our society is that we're so consumer driven based. And, it's nice to have new shiny things, but it's better to have a democracy, I think.
Yes.
Also, a lot of those smarter, richer people are in a position in life where their perspective is a bit skewed relative to what some of us might think is necessary, and they see a very different path forward that, to their mind, addresses the issues that they face, and they simply lack the awareness of the other perspective to realize
And the empathy.
Yeah, I mean, it's simply so far out of their personal experience that they don't know that that's an issue.
And honestly, I think our society has gotten so siloed. We're all in our own little bubbles that, I mean, how many brown people do you know? How many poor people do you know? How many people that live a different existence than you do you know? And you have to really be conscious about that to create that kind of environment for yourself. And luckily, I came from lower means and I worked hard and my husband worked hard and we got ourselves into what I'd like to say the middle class, but we didn't forget where we came from. And we know that we still have friends that are struggling to get their bills paid. And then we have other friends that are wealthy beyond belief. And the disparity between the two is just so phenomenal. I see it going broader and broader and broader. And like most middle class people, I'm holding on by my nails too. My husband and I both believe like we're 2 paychecks away from being broke, and we still have that mentality.
I am broke, so there
Well,
you go.
go.
Right?
I mean,
so yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you work on a really local level. You work specifically on local campaigns, and one of the ones we mentioned earlier was school board. I mean, these are local campaigns. Is that where you want to be? Is that the thing that you think is?
I mean, it's weird, but I like to think of myself as like I see a hole in the wall and I want to stick my finger in it. So
Yes.
I've kind of.
I say that too, but then people think that's inappropriate.
It is kind of inappropriate. I was going to say the word dike, but then I thought that might be problematic. Stick your finger in the dike like the little Dutch boy. Sorry, that's kind of.
Yes, I'm there with you.
I think you're playing to your base there.
I think so too. But no, seriously, I just kind of fell into local politics. I started when I first joined Indivisible. I'm very passionate about immigrant rights and protecting undocumented people and making a clear path to citizenship and immigration reform. So I started with the Safe Communities Act. And I've actually helped advocate for Francisco Rodriguez, who was a undocumented worker at MIT who ended up getting taken, and he is still in jail right now at South Bay.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I've been trying to follow up on his story, but then sometimes at work I just get really distracted and I feel really bad. No, it's one of those things where it's like you're like I need to like Google that or like I need to find out where he is and then. But so my mom works for Draper Labs, which used to be a sister site, our sister company with MIT. So my mom was like kind of like close connected to it, and this man was like beloved. like you wouldn't think of someone who's like a maintenance worker as like a beloved person, but then again, like when my mom, like she knows all of the maintenance people at Draper Labs because they've all been there for like decades, and she was really upset about this, and I was kind of hoping that it was one of those like stories that like they kind of let him out and didn't tell anybody.
No, he's still in jail right now, and he missed the birth of his son. He celebrated his 44th birthday in jail, and this is a person who's like a born again Christian, like a good person, like followed the tenets of his beliefs. a family man, a businessman, a job creator. He had 13 employees that worked for him in a carpet cleaning company that are all unemployed because of Donald Trump.
But so what is he? Is he on a civil detainer, which is like not a thing?
Right. So I know a little too much that I'm not supposed to talk about, but basically they are reviewing his political asylum case because honestly, if he goes back to his country, he will be murdered. He saw some really bad things happen down there and was witness to a crime, and there are people still 20 years later looking to take him out. And so anyway, I started working on that, which was really hard. And I just kind of fell into local politics. I would go to the city council meetings. I started meeting people locally. And I went to an open house at the mosque, and that's how I met Nicole. And she and I found out we lived about 3 blocks away from each other, and we just started chatting. And then she told me she was running for school committee and needed some help. And I said, you know what, let me help a neighbor out. The first Muslim American woman running for office in our country, in our city. I need to stand up for this person. This is somebody that I need to show my friendship and my support for. It's to, promote diversity.
And unfortunately, we do have to let you guys know the election happened on the 7th, and Nicole did not defeat the incumbent.
We did have a huge turnout, though.
There was an amazing turnout. I heard one of the voting stations actually ran out of ballots and had to get more.
They both ran out of ballots.
They both ran out.
I should say they had 400 ballots in one, and 397 ballots were posted. But they ran out because 3 of them were voided. So, and the other one ran out around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, yeah.
Did they get more?
They
Yes,
went
they
and
got more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't
People still were
believe-
allowed to vote.
They did not believe that they were running out of ballots. They had to come down to witness it.
Yeah, because guess what? People are fucking engaged and they're fucking angry and they want to make change.
Just so you have an idea, citywide, I think the voter turnout was somewhere around 21%.
21%, yeah.
This was a year where it was only local elections. It was only the city council and the school committee. There was no mayor candidate, let alone any state level officials or any national level anything. So you expect turnout to be fairly low. In Nicole's ward, because we vote by ward here, there were 2 stations there, and I think it was a 65% turnout.
65%, yep.
Which is wildly outpacing every other ward in the city.
You don't get 65% in a general election.
Yeah.
Presidential elections don't get that.
I hate to say it, but I really think that a lot of people came out to possibly vote against her.
It's entirely possible, but you got a lot of people to show up.
But we got people engaged, so that's the first step, right?
Important step.
I mean, we need to inform them a little better,
Yes.
And again, Nicole was running against a fairly popular incumbent who, has been a lifelong resident of the city, and Nicole has the significant social handicap, unfortunately right now, of being a woman running for office wearing a hijab.
And she's new to the city. I mean, let's not forget that, because I've lived in this town for 18 years and I'm still a newcomer.
Yeah, I mean, I do love her sweet Utah accent, but it doesn't necessarily play well in Boston where you gotta drop your R's.
Yep.
So when we opened this part of the show up, I talked about the idea that local politics is where you get the people into office that will graduate up the political chain and climb that ladder into the bigger offices that actually matter. And to me, that's really important, and it's a game that the Republicans have been winning for 30 years. The Democrats pulled out of major support of small local candidates about 35 years ago, and a few years into it, the Republicans noticed that gap and started pushing local to the point where if you are running in a Republican district for even literally the city council or the school and the school board, and these are very minor seats in comparison to, say, the presidency, where the GOP really cares, they will still offer you assistance, strategy, money, boots on the ground, all the way up the chain, all the way down the chain. And the Democrats don't. And there's a reason why, well, now I believe it's 29, but, they just shortly ago had 31 of the governor's houses.
And they control a huge majority of the state legislatures as well.
the state legislatures, the House, the Senate. It's because they start people off young in these offices that are, in comparison to the larger ones, pretty easy. They're kind of, starter work. And if you don't get candidates that you agree with into those positions locally, if you don't put in the time, there will be no candidates you agree with nationally. And so, again, local politics is super important. In regards to that, so you've worked on local politics here now in the area. As I understand that it's a hard game in that winning these small local elections can be by sometimes 5-6 votes. And, it's all about the door knocking, the phone calling, the everything else. What are those big steps that the locals do to get those votes?
Well, I mean, first of all, the majority of people, at least in Malden, that my observation is that they're locals. They were born in Malden. Their families were born in Malden. They went to the local high school. They know their neighbors, and they're interwoven into the community. Where I see the challenge of the rest of us as outsiders or new people is a challenge. But I honestly think that the townies or the whatever you want to call them, the originators, they are going by the way of the dodo bird. They're not going to be around much longer. The white flight is happening.
This is the most diverse town in city in the state.
But I think just like the fragile white male that's being attacked everywhere, I think that the local person, the local Maldonian is feeling threatened by this new influx of new people. And I mean, our population is 23% Asian. If you could tap into that voter base, you could take over this town.
Absolutely.
All you have to do is be against weed.
Well,
Honestly, I cannot tell you how angry I am. I was watching the polls for one of the other candidates that we cared about, Jen Spatafor. I've told you guys about before. She did actually win, so congrats to her. But I saw people come into the polling station who did not speak English, who were Chinese speakers, I believe Mandarin, but I don't, because I don't speak either Mandarin or Cantonese. And there were no translators available for them in a city where we have a huge segment of the population that does not have English as their first language and specifically has Mandarin or Cantonese as their first language.
I have to say that I watched myself for a little while, and every single person that had a problem trying to vote was foreign born and had a language barrier. It was appalling. It really was.
There's a woman out in California who has made it her calling to help educate not necessarily the elderly, but there is a big elderly Asian population, and a lot of them don't speak English or don't read English. Maybe they speak it, but they don't read it, and they get so she's taken it upon herself. I forgot her name. I really wish I knew her name, but
find it and link to it.
Yeah, it was a great podcast to listen to that she talked about it, and how she would go into the elderly homes where and then she would basically have these seminars where she would educate them on what's the election, how to vote, what the ballot looks like. And obviously she spoke the language so she could talk to them, and a lot of them voted for the very first time in the last election.
Yeah, I have to say that one of the things that to me was a win that isn't, no, we did not win the election, but I got out and I met my neighbors, you know what I mean? And I saw the diversity that surrounds me. I met the diversity. I went out canvassing one day with a volunteer who was Haitian Creole, and I speak Spanish. And then we had another friend of Nicole's who spoke Mandarin. And so we had the three major languages other than English covered while we were canvassing. And my husband, who unfortunately doesn't speak anything but English, he would be the person that would run up to people going, excuse me. And he knew for sure that they did not speak English very well. But then he'd wave one of us over, and we'd come over and just start showing their literature in their language, talking to people and really connecting with people. And even though we didn't win, we planted a seed, and hopefully that will grow. I mean, one of the greatest things too on election day, I was making phone calls as well. I was kind of doing everything. I called a Syrian family that was on the list of her for sure voters, and it was 5 people in the house. And I spoke to the son that was speaking English. He was very leery. Who are you? How do you have my number? Why are you calling me? And I started talking to him about, it's the election, Nakom Salam and blah, blah, blah. And I could hear the hesitation in his voice when I was speaking to him, like, it's really important that you come out to vote. And so when I hung up the phone, I called Nicole and I said, listen, I want you to call this family because they seem like they're not going to come out. And she talked to them, they prayed together, and then we drove the entire family to the polls. And the wife was so afraid, and she was telling Nicole that, in her country, if you vote the wrong way, there's ramifications for that. And so she wanted us to come in with her to the ballots. And we're like, we can't do that. It's against the law. But we got her to do it. Like we cajoled her and told her it was going to be okay. And she voted for the first time as an American citizen. So, I mean, I know that's like very Pollyanna, but it does. Like, yeah, we didn't win, but we got this lady to vote.
I remember late in the day on election day, I was out knocking on doors for Steve Winslow, who was one of the candidates at large. And
not the guy from Family Matters.
Not the guy from Family Matters.
I was very disappointed that it's
You mean
not.
the guy from Die Hard?
No, Family Matters. He's the dad. He's the dad, damn it.
He's also the cop.
He's the dad cop.
He's the dad cop.
Dad cop. Anyway, I saw one of the names on the list as we're going through like our last minute, like these people don't have phone numbers. So like we're going to go knock and remind them it's the election. It's like 5 o'clock already. It's ridiculous. But I see one of the names on the list. I'm like, oh my God, I know her. And I go over and I knock on the door and she's there. And it's Fatima, who's the mother of my son's, one of his best friends. And she's right by the polling station. So, like, hey, we're just reminding people to go out and vote. And she's like, yeah, I already went out and voted. I voted for Nicole. Like, and she sees the sticker that I've got on for Steve. I voted for him, too. Like, and it was amazing because this is a woman who came to the U.S. in, like, really, really dire straits. And then her husband left her here. And, like, she's, as a single mom with a really strong language barrier. Like, I'm not doing her accent, but it's a thick one. And to have her, have been engaged because people were finally reaching out to this population that's, they are invested in being in Malden. They chose to be here out of everywhere. And maybe they chose by just throwing a dart at the map. Maybe it's where they landed, but they're here now and they deserve to be represented. Having a voice in city government, that's not something that you have to like buy a house to qualify for. You don't have to be a 3rd generation Maldonian for the ward councilor at large to actually pick up the phone for you. And, that's something that I think, we've been working on in our revolution, but also in Indivisible, making sure that people understand that you can go out and say something and you deserve to hear back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that it's just so astounding how disenfranchised so many people are. And if you can get them excited about how you can change your town, then maybe you can get them excited about how you can change your state and your government and your national government.
One of the things that I'm hearing that's really important here for people who are thinking about running local is learn the demographics of your city and translate your materials into those various languages. When knocking on doors, bring people who speak them with you. When making phone calls, make sure you have those people. The language barrier is a huge problem, and you should play to that.
But also, getting the change is a huge hurdle, especially in the small towns. I know in my town, change scares the shit out of everybody, and they only come out to vote against change.
Yes.
So it's like getting engaged with your neighbors and like explaining to them that like, hey, change isn't terrible. Change is a welcoming thing. Change needs to happen for like your life. Like you change as you grow up. Like you don't become the same. You're not the same person your whole life. You change. But it was very not frightening, but it was just a very surreal moment when I watched in my town when we had, because we didn't do elections, we did a town warrant, so we did voting on the budget the night before the Tuesday elections. And one of the things was prohibition on all things marijuana. And that was the only thing that got everyone out in my town, was they were dead afraid of the marijuana. They thought that it was going to bring in all this crime, the rapists, and like, And it was just like, but the fact that like it was literally called prohibition on marijuana was the ordinance, and just the amount of fright that was in my town over something that's not there. It's not a thing yet because it's not legal, and it's also just because even if like the industry becomes legal doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in our town. But they were so afraid of it. And they just spout all of this fear that I was like, what year is it? 2017 or 1917? I can't really tell right now.
So one of the things that has been working, I think locally, like obviously you got to work on getting your guy elected. You got to work on, getting your candidates engaged. But also one of the things that Indivisible is big on is bringing issues that are, on the left side of the spectrum maybe to the attention of the local people so they get acted on, and also just gently nudging or actively shoving your local politicians to the left. I know that you had to call Catherine Clark today about something. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, no, I was calling Catherine Clark about the horrible tax bill, basically. But, I mean, it's become a habit now. Like at first I was very nervous and how am I going to talk to these people? I was very intimidated by the whole.
Becomes normal.
It does. It really, and I mean, like my husband will call his members of Congress on his way into work every day.
Oh,
that's what he does.
They're saved in my phone, my contact list. Like I have them on speed dial in my phone right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Keith will literally sit in traffic on his way to Cambridge, which takes about 45 minutes, and he will call everybody, make the rounds. Sometimes he calls the local guys. He'll call Donato. He'll call El Trino. He'll call Jason Lewis if there's something local that he's interested in. And I mean, it's a habit. You got to just start picking it up. And they know who he is. And I mean, for example, I have a meeting on Monday with Paul Donato, who just absolutely loves me.
Or does he love staring at you?
Yeah. He's kind of old school. I'd like to say he's a Democrat with a little D.
That could also be a dick joke.
Kayla.
You think so?
You said little D.
Yeah, he's a small Democrat.
Yes.
It's like tiny hands.
I mean, and honestly, like where I agree with you that local politics are important, I also feel that we need to start targeting the state house. We have a Democratic state house.
80% Democratic.
In name alone, these people are conservatives. They are
Incredibly conservative.
They are ridiculously conservative.
We have one person in that state house that I originally met in a tent at Occupy Boston. Mike Connolly.
Just there's an amendment I just saw. I didn't get a chance to look into it too first, but apparently the House passed a Blue Lives Matter amendment in Massachusetts.
Is that part of the criminal justice reform?
Yeah.
Oh, that had 187 amendments. I'm sorry that I just could not decipher all of it.
Just ignore my eye twitch. We'll be fine. We'll get through this.
Yeah, no, Big Mike is amazing. Big Mike is amazing.
But yeah, you don't get people to the state house without the local. So Mike Connolly is a good example. I met this man at Occupy Boston. He was there on the ground with us doing our protest, holding our signs, talking to the media, helping out in the food tent, everything he could do. And you could tell, what he cared about and that he was truly progressive. And his first attempt at getting into politics after that was to run for city council in Cambridge. And Cambridge, Massachusetts is a pretty liberal area. Other than, if you step on like the campuses of Harvard, then, the young Republicans definitely have some sway there. But he ran and on his second attempt made it into office.
Well, they used to call him No Money Mike when he ran that first time.
Yes, No Money Mike. He was trying to get money out of politics. So after running locally and being in the city council there in Cambridge, that got him the experience, the knowledge, not only of running the campaigns, but actually, attempting to work the way that cities, that states, that all these places actually work, the bureaucracy, the red tape, all of the things that you're not going to learn in school. You're not going to learn on the ground campaigning. You're going to learn when you have to sit in the seat and do it. Half of it's institutional memory that you only learn from the other people that have been sitting there for years before you got there in conversation and through actions. And he learned what he learned there, and as quickly as he could, moved on to run for the state house and made it in as one of our representatives. And what I like that's going on right now is we actually have another person who I met at Occupy, Nadim Mason, who followed that same path up to the city council. So I met this man at Occupy. I was actually sitting there on the grass at Occupy Boston at our location at Dudley, waiting for anyone else to show up as just the only person sitting there on the grass in the middle of the day. And he rode up on a really nice bike, just, and asked me if I was there for the thing, and looked around and saw I was the only person there. We talked for a while. He went off to grab some food and bring it back for us to sit and talk. And he went on from Occupy to move up to, again, Cambridge City Council, got his experience there. He is now running for Congress.
Third.
He is running in our 3rd district for Congress. That'll be interesting to see if he makes it up to the top. It'll be one of the first occupiers to get that high in U.S. government. And I think that's a really good sign. He is progressive. He is amazing. He is Muslim. And it'll be interesting to see the first, I believe, Muslim candidate from Massachusetts to actually get to any national level election and to possibly win it, I hope.
That entire race is going to be exciting. The first trans woman also just announced today. Her name is Alexandra Chandler. I met her at the Indivisible conference this past weekend, and she's like, "You should friend me on Facebook because I'm going to make an announcement on Thursday." And
What a millennial thing to say.
I know. Well, she's a little older, but what's interesting about her is she, after 9/11, joined the military. She joined naval intelligence and was the first person to transition while working in naval intelligence under Rumsfeld.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, Rumsfeld?
Yeah, like Bush and Rumsfeld. Yeah, for sure, for real. Like
That
check out.
couldn't have been fun.
You have to check out her video. I mean, it's intriguing to me. And then you also have Juanita. I know, right? Juanita Mateus is also running for that seat. So we have a Hispanic woman, a trans woman, a Muslim, and the white Irish guy.
Wait, that sounds like a premise to like one of those hacky jokes. A trans woman, a Muslim man, and a Latino all walk into a bar.
Don't forget the Irish guy.
No, the Irish guy's already there. He's already drinking. He doesn't leave
Maybe
the
the
bar.
Well,
he's
then.
he's the punchline.
There goes our Southie audience.
I know.
Implying we had a Southie audience.
Indeed.
Listen, he's an insider. He worked for Kennedy. You know what I mean? Like he's got the whole Irish Catholic pedigree.
Oh yeah.
For Massachusetts.
So he's a white man in Massachusetts, is what you're saying.
So we've talked a lot about local politics here. We've gone on for a bit. I think we've made a bunch of really good points.
One thing I want to say before we get too far off of this, but just on the point of Nadim here, is Nadim actually started Jetpack, which was this pack that's designed to help Muslim people who are considering becoming candidates get all of those skills together, figure out what they need to do, get the confidence built so they can run for office. That's the reason that Nicole ran. I only know about this because my husband happens to be friends with Nadim, happens to find out about this, says, hey, this is a person you should know. I meet Nicole because of this, and because I meet Nicole, I have fallen into this rabbit hole of local politics, and now I have, like, strong opinions about trash bags. Which is how you know you're an adult.
Wait a minute, you really care about the trash bags?
I actually really like the trash bags, and I will fight you over it.
I agree with you. Like,
Okay.
well, let's let go of the trash bags. We need
Never
to move
lived
on.
anywhere until I moved to Malden that like you had to pay for trash bags. That still blows my mind.
So my father.
We're going to go on for
We're
another 2
talking
hours
about
if we
trash
actually
bags?
get
No,
into
no.
about
So
trash
my
bags.
father is so upset with the trash change in my town that he says, if anyone brings me back my 3 barrels, I will vote for them. That's all. Like, because we went from 3 barrels to one of like the town assigned like things, and he's so upset because like I liked my 3 barrels. Because if anyone brings me back my 3 barrels, they are getting my vote.
I mean,
Local politics.
But that's
it's
how it
all about
works.
the trash bags here in Malden.
It's all about the trash bag, but also, getting people involved. It's all about, those weird connections that you're not sure about making. So the one thing I want, folks who are listening who are maybe in like super white activisty spaces, which I am totally guilty of, you're going to be at events where there's lots of people. Try to go to events that are hosted by people who are not the same color as you every once in a while. You'll meet great people there.
Where I met Nicole.
Exactly. And actually foster those relationships. Make Facebook friends with people. follow what they're doing, follow them on Twitter, do whatever it is so that you can keep up, because sooner or later, one of those connections is going to take you down this rabbit hole and you're going to find out where you're supposed to be.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing about activism that some people don't realize is that it's about relationship building. Not you have to build relationships with other individuals to create a movement. And if more people focused on that instead of their own personal egos and, oh, look what I've done, look what we've done, and turned it into look what we did, like you did with the Occupy movement, the world would be a better place. We could start fixing things. We could stop being assholes to each other. Can you curse on this? Yes, you have to.
We've already done plenty.
I was going to say, wait, no, you have cursed. Okay. Sorry, I'm used to keeping it clean.
We kept it clean enough to get past the explicit test on Apple for iTunes,
Good,
and
good.
now she just won't stop.
I gotcha.
Well, I'm just full of rage. Of all this rage. I used to not be a swear, and now I just can't stop because I'm just full of rage all the time, and I want to set things on fire.
2017's been like that.
I actually have a friend that you should talk to. He runs a self-healing.
If you said man, no.
Well, he's a fabulous gay bear, so
Okay,
you would,
then
he does
he's not a real
healing
man.
circles and things like that.
That was
Kayla.
wow, Kayla.
Kayla.
All right.
No,
No.
straight.
We heard you.
I'm
You
just
said not a real man. We heard you loud and clear.
yeah, he's better.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't the implication in the words you used. You know, just
Yeah,
gonna
well,
say
you
that.
He's definitely sexier than Blake Shelton. Let's put
Oh
it
my
that
So-
way.
god.
so I'm gonna-
Ah!
Everything is problematic.
I'm gonna-
Everyone is problematic.
I'm gonna call it. That is the best way for us to possibly end the show tonight. Again, get out there for your local politics. Find your local groups, talk to them, find out what they need, help all you can. It is important. If we don't get progressive candidates at the local level, we don't get progressive candidates at the national level. All right, everyone, that's episode 34. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in. The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gaures, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action.